The palm heel strike caught Master Gunnery Sergeant Derek Morrison's solar plexus with surgical precision, and 200 Marines watching went dead silent as their best fighter stumbled backward, gasping for air like a drowning man.
"They only gave you that uniform because your daddy died a hero,"
he'd said 30 seconds earlier, loud enough for everyone to hear. Now he was learning exactly how wrong assumptions could be. Lieutenant Maya Nakamura, 5'3", 120 pounds, holding a 5th-degree black belt they'd all dismissed as irrelevant, reset her stance and waited. 12 more of Morrison's black belts stood behind him, all of them about to discover that size meant nothing against 2 decades of Kyokushin discipline. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your location in the comments and hit subscribe, because what happens next will redefine everything you thought you knew about strength. The morning sun hadn't fully cleared the Virginia horizon when Maya Nakamura walked into the Marine Corps Martial Arts Center of Excellence, carrying nothing but a worn sea bag and the weight of her father's legacy. The building smelled like decades of sweat, rubber mats, and testosterone-fueled aggression. Exactly what she'd expected. She was 29 years old, barely cleared 5'3" in boots, and weighed maybe 120 after a heavy meal. Her black hair was pulled into a regulation bun so tight it made her scalp ache. The tan utilities she wore carried her name, Nakamura, stitched across the chest, and the 2 silver bars on her collar marked her as an 03. A Navy lieutenant walking into a Marine facility to teach Marines how to fight. She might as well have painted a target on her back. "Lieutenant Nakamura!" The voice belonged to a barrel-chested man in his mid-40s, with gray threading through his high and tight haircut, and eyes that had seen too many deployments to count. Master Sergeant Victor Reyes, according to the name tape on his utilities. "That's me," Maya said, extending her hand. Reyes shook it firmly, studying her face with the kind of evaluation senior enlisted personnel had perfected over decades. "Welcome to Quantico. I run the day-to-day operations here. You'll be working with our advanced combatives instructors." "Looking forward to it." "Fair warning, ma'am. Some of these Marines are going to test you. It's not personal, it's just how they are with outsiders, especially Navy outsiders." Maya almost smiled. "I understand completely, Master Sergeant. Testing is expected. Disrespect won't be tolerated." Reyes nodded slowly, something like approval flickering across his weathered features. "You might work out just fine here." Across the training floor, Maya could feel eyes tracking her every movement. A group of Marines had stopped their warm-up drills to watch. At the center of that group stood a man who radiated authority and barely contained hostility in equal measure. Master Gunnery Sergeant Derek Morrison was 34 years old, built like a cement mixer, and carried himself with the kind of coiled spring tension that came from too many combat deployments and not enough peace. His face was all hard angles, square jaw, sharp cheekbones, eyes the color of cold steel. His utilities bore the rank insignia of the Marine Corps' senior enlisted leadership, and the ribbons above his left breast pocket told a story of valor that few could match. Silver Star, 2 Bronze Stars with V device, Purple Heart with 2 clusters, Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal with V device. He was also staring at Maya like she was a personal insult to everything he held sacred. "That's her," Morrison said to the Marine standing next to him, not bothering to lower his voice. "That's the Navy SEAL they're sending to teach us how to fight?" Staff Sergeant Kyle Chen, one of Morrison's senior instructors, shifted uncomfortably. "That's what the orders say, Gunny. She looks like a strong wind would knock her over." "Orders are orders." Morrison's jaw tightened. "Yeah, orders." Maya pretended not to hear, moving to the edge of the mat to observe the training session already in progress. 12 Marines, All black belts in the Marine Corps martial arts program were running advanced close-quarters combat drills. Their technique was solid, aggressive, built on the Marine Corps philosophy of overwhelming violence of action. But she could see the flaws. Small things. A dropped hand here, an overextended kick there. Weight distribution that left them vulnerable to counters they weren't anticipating. "Attention on deck!" Morrison's voice cracked like a rifle shot. Every Marine in the facility froze instantly, turning toward Maya with expressions ranging from curiosity to thinly veiled contempt. Morrison walked toward her slowly, deliberately, his 12 black belts forming up behind him like a pack of wolves sensing blood. "Listen up, people. We have a special visitor today. This is Lieutenant Nakamura from Naval Special Warfare Command. She's here to observe our training, and maybe—" He paused, letting the word hang in the air like smoke. "Teach us a thing or two about how Navy SEALs do business." The way he said Navy SEALs made it sound like a curse word. "Isn't that right, ma'am?" Maya met his stare without blinking. "That's correct, Master Gunnery Sergeant." Morrison stepped closer, using every inch of his 6'2" frame to loom over her. Psychological warfare? Amateur hour. "Tell me something, Lieutenant. Your father was Colonel David Nakamura, right? Medal of Honor recipient? Die in Kandahar, leading a platoon of Marines out of an ambush." Every person in the room went absolutely still. "That's correct," Maya said quietly. "Real American hero. The kind of Marine we tell stories about to motivate recruits." Morrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm just wondering, out loud, you understand, if maybe that's the only reason you're standing here right now. Because Daddy's Medal of Honor opened doors your own skills couldn't." The words detonated in the silence like a fragmentation grenade. Master Sergeant Reyes materialized from his office like he'd teleported. "Master Guns, that is completely out of line. You will stand down immediately." Morrison ignored him completely, keeping his eyes locked on Maya. "I'm just saying, ma'am, we take hand-to-hand combat seriously in the Corps. This isn't some publicity stunt or diversity quota. We need instructors who can actually fight, not people coasting on their dead relatives' reputations." Somewhere behind Morrison, one of his Marines snickered. Another one was grinning like this was the best entertainment he'd seen all month. The entire facility held its breath. Maya let the silence stretch for 5 long seconds. When she finally spoke, her voice was conversational, almost friendly. "You want to know if I can fight, Master Gunnery Sergeant?" Morrison's predatory smile widened. "Yeah, actually, I do." "Then let's find out." Maya dropped her sea bag on the floor with a deliberate thud. "You and your 12 black belts. Sequential sparring, 90-second rounds each, full contact. I'll fight all 13 of you, one after another, no breaks between rounds." The gym erupted in shocked murmurs and a few disbelieving laughs. Morrison's expression shifted from hostile mockery to genuine surprise. "You're serious?" "Completely serious." Reyes stepped forward, his voice urgent. "Lieutenant, I strongly advise against this course of action. This is 13 trained fighters, all of them combat veterans." "I understand the math, Master Sergeant," Maya said calmly. "The challenge stands." Morrison studied her face, looking for doubt or fear, or the kind of desperate bravado that came from knowing you'd already lost. He found none of those things. "All right then, ma'am," Morrison nodded slowly. "Tomorrow morning, 0800 hours. You and me and my entire crew. Full contact sparring. When you lose, and you will lose,
You admit you're only here because of your last name, and you stop wasting our time. And when I win, Maya said quietly, you show me the respect my rank and my service record have earned. You treat me like the instructor I am, not like some diversity checkbox you need to humiliate. Morrison extended his hand. Deal. Maya shook it. His grip was crushing, designed to intimidate. She didn't flinch.
As Morrison and his Marines walked away, already talking in loud voices about how they were going to destroy her, Master Sergeant Reyes moved close to Maya's shoulder. Ma'am, with all due respect, you just made a serious mistake. Morrison is the best hand-to-hand fighter on this entire base, and those 12 Marines backing him up, they're not far behind. You're going to get hurt. Badly. Maya picked up her sea bag and slung it over her shoulder. Master Sergeant, do you know what Kyokushin karate is? Can't say I do, ma'am. It's a Japanese martial art. Full contact, bare-knuckle fighting. No protective gear. The name translates to the ultimate truth. My sensei in Tokyo used to say that Kyokushin doesn't care about your size, or your gender, or your feelings. It only cares about your discipline and your will to continue fighting when everything in your body is screaming at you to quit. She started toward the locker room, then paused and looked back at Reyes. I earned my 5th-degree black belt by fighting 100 opponents in continuous sparring over 89 hours. No breaks, no mercy. By the end, I was hallucinating from exhaustion, and my hands were broken in 4 places. But I didn't quit. Maya's expression hardened. 13 Marines in 90-second rounds? That's not a challenge, Master Sergeant. That's just Tuesday. That night, alone in her temporary quarters on base, Maya sat on the edge of her rack and stared at the photograph she kept in her personal kit. Her father, in his dress blue uniform, taken 1 month before he deployed to Afghanistan for the last time. He looked strong, confident, exactly how she remembered him. She'd been 19 when the notification officers came to her door. A sophomore at UC San Diego, studying international relations, trying to figure out what she wanted to do with her life. The knock came at 6:30 on a Thursday morning. She'd known what it meant before she even opened the door. No one knocked that early, unless the news was the kind that changed your life forever. Ms. Nakamura, I'm Captain Rodriguez from Marine Forces Pacific. This is Chaplain Williams. May we come in? The rest of that conversation was a blur of formal words and careful phrasing designed to soften the impact of information that could never be soft. Her father had died leading a platoon of Marines out of a Taliban ambush in the Pech River Valley. He'd stayed behind to provide covering fire while his men withdrew. Killed 23 enemy fighters before a rocket-propelled grenade ended his last stand. 17 Marines came home alive because Colonel David Nakamura decided their lives mattered more than his. At the funeral, a 3-star general she'd never met handed her the folded flag from her father's casket and told her that Colonel Nakamura had died with honor, that his sacrifice would never be forgotten. Then the general looked her directly in the eyes and said something that altered the trajectory of her entire existence. Your father believed that service to something larger than yourself was the highest possible calling a person could answer. He lived that belief every single day until the moment he died. The question you need to ask yourself now is whether you have the courage to do the same. 6 months later, Maya enlisted in the Navy. Not because she wanted to prove anything to anyone, because she wanted to understand what her father had found worth dying for. Bud/S training was 26 weeks of systematic physical and psychological destruction, designed to identify the 1% of candidates who possessed the mental toughness to become Navy SEALs. Out of her initial class of 240 candidates, 23 graduated. Maya was one of them. But she'd earned more than a trident pin during those 6 months. She'd earned scars, physical and psychological, that would never completely fade. During Hell Week, a male instructor had cornered her in the equipment shed after a night swim exercise. He'd put his hands on her, told her she didn't belong, said he'd make sure she failed unless she was friendly. She'd broken his nose with a palm heel strike and reported him immediately. The investigation had been brutal, not because the Navy didn't believe her. The instructor's history with female candidates spoke for itself, but because the publicity had turned her into a symbol instead of a person. Every news outlet wanted to interview the female SEAL candidate who fought back. Every activist group wanted to use her story to push their agenda. Maya had refused all interviews, kept her head down, and focused on graduating. The instructor was court-martialed and dishonorably discharged. Maya earned her trident. But the experience taught her something fundamental about institutions and power. People would judge you based on anything except your actual competence. Gender, size, background, who your father was, everything except whether you could do the job. She'd spent the last 7 years proving she could do the job. 3 deployments: Helmand Province, Ramadi, Mosul. She'd killed enemy combatants, saved wounded teammates, executed direct action missions with precision that earned commendations from commanders who'd initially doubted whether a woman belonged in their task units. And now, sitting in a bare-bones quarters at Quantico, she was facing the same bullshit again. Different uniform, same ignorance. Her phone buzzed. A text message from a number she recognized instantly. Sensei Yamamoto. I heard about your challenge tomorrow. Remember, anger is the enemy of discipline. Fight with clear mind, not clouded heart. Make me proud. Maya smiled despite herself. Her sensei was 78 years old, living in Tokyo, and somehow still knew exactly what was happening in her life before she told him. She typed back, I will honor your teachings. Thank you, sensei. His response came immediately. You already honor them by being who you are. Now go show these Marines what true discipline looks like. Maya set down the phone and began her evening meditation practice. 45 minutes of controlled breathing and mental preparation, visualizing each fight, anticipating strategies, centering her mind. By the time she finished, the anger had drained away completely. What remained was calm, focused purpose. Tomorrow wasn't about proving Derek Morrison wrong. It was about teaching a lesson that transcended any individual fight. Competence doesn't care about your assumptions. Skill doesn't care about your prejudices. Discipline doesn't care about your feelings. The truth was simple and brutal and absolute. And tomorrow she'd demonstrate it, 13 times in a row. By 07:30 the next morning, word had spread across Camp Quantico like wildfire through dry brush. A Navy SEAL officer was going to fight 13 Marine black belts in sequential full-contact sparring. By 07:45, over 200 Marines had crammed into the Martial Arts Center of Excellence, packing the observation areas, sitting on equipment, standing 3 deep along the walls. The energy in the room was electric, part anticipation, part bloodlust, all of it focused on the main training mat where this impossible challenge would take place. Maya arrived at exactly 7:55, carrying a plain black duffel bag. She was wearing a traditional black karate gi, not the Marine Corps combatives uniform, not Navy SEAL tactical gear. The uniform of Kyokushin Karate, with her 5th-degree black belt tied properly according to protocols that were older than the Marine Corps itself. She moved to the edge of the mat and began stretching. Slow, controlled movements. No aggressive warm-up designs to intimidate opponents.
Just methodical preparation focused entirely on breath control and body awareness. She ignored the crowd, ignored the crude jokes and whispered predictions of her imminent destruction, ignored everything except the discipline her sensei had spent 23 years teaching her. Across the mat, Derek Morrison and his 12 Marines stood in a line like executioners, waiting for the condemned. All of them wearing Marine Corps combatives uniforms, all of them warming up with loud, aggressive pad work, clearly designed to demonstrate their physical power and psych her out. Master Sergeant Reyes approached Maya one final time, his expression grim. "Lieutenant, you can still back out. There's no shame in recognizing when you're outmatched." Maya finished a hamstring stretch and stood smoothly. "I'm not outmatched, Master Sergeant. I'm exactly where I need to be." Reyes nodded reluctantly. "Then let's review the rules. 90-second rounds, full contact, fight ends on tap-out, referee stoppage, or clear dominant position held for 5 seconds. Medical personnel are standing by." "Understood." Reyes raised his voice to address the entire facility. "This is a sanctioned training evolution. Anyone who interferes will face disciplinary action. Fighters will show respect at all times. Is that clear?" A rumble of acknowledgement from the crowd. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison, are you ready?" Morrison stepped onto the mat, rolling his massive shoulders. "Ready, Master Sergeant." "Lieutenant Nakamura?" Maya bowed formally from the waist, the traditional sign of respect before combat in Kyokushin karate. Acknowledging her opponent as a warrior worthy of her complete focus. Morrison didn't bow back. That told her everything she needed to know about his understanding of discipline and respect. "Begin!" Morrison came at her like a freight train, closing the distance in 2 explosive steps, throwing a massive overhand right designed to end the fight in the first 5 seconds. Maya didn't retreat, didn't panic, didn't flinch. She stepped inside his guard at the last possible microsecond, felt his fist pass close enough to displace her hair, and delivered a textbook Kyokushin palm heel strike to his solar plexus, the precise point where the diaphragm connects to the lower rib cage. The impact sounded like a baseball bat hitting a side of beef. Morrison's eyes went wide with shock. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His diaphragm had completely seized, making breathing impossible for 3 to 5 seconds. He stumbled backward, gasping, his face already turning red. The crowd went absolutely silent. Maya didn't press the attack. She stepped back into her fighting stance, balanced, hands up, waiting. Morrison recovered after 5 seconds, sucking in a desperate breath. His expression had changed completely. The smug confidence had evaporated. In its place was something much more dangerous. Focused aggression from a trained fighter who just realized his opponent was no joke. He came in again, this time with a combination: jab, cross, low kick aimed at her lead leg. Maya blocked the first 2 strikes and checked the kick perfectly with her shin, the impact producing a sharp crack that made people in the front row wince. Then she countered with a mawashi geri, a Kyokushin roundhouse kick, delivered not with the instep, but with the ball of the foot, all her body weight rotating through her hips into a strike that caught Morrison perfectly in the floating ribs. He grunted, his face twisting with pain. The crowd murmured. This wasn't going how anyone expected. Morrison's strategy shifted. He started using his reach advantage, working jabs and straight punches to keep distance, testing her defense for openings. Maya stayed patient, reading his patterns, waiting. After 30 seconds, she'd identified his tell. He dropped his right hand maybe 2 inches after throwing his jab. Most opponents would never notice, but Maya had spent 2 decades learning to see exactly those kinds of micro flaws. The next time he jabbed, she slipped right and delivered an uraken, a spinning back fist that caught him clean on the jaw. His head snapped sideways violently.
Several Marines stood up to see better. Morrison stumbled, caught himself with one hand against the mat, shook his head hard to clear the stars from his vision. Time! 90 seconds were up. Morrison walked off the mat on unsteady legs, his jaw already swelling, his breathing hard and ragged. The second Marine stepped up immediately. Staff Sergeant Kyle Chen, a wrestler with a background in judo. He came in low, shooting for a double-leg takedown. Maya sprawled perfectly, drove her hips back hard, completely stuffed the attempt. Chen tried to adjust mid-shot, and she caught him in a guillotine choke, her arm locked around his neck like an iron bar. He tapped frantically after 8 seconds, his face turning purple. The third Marine lasted 70 seconds before she swept his legs with an osotogari, a judo throw, and secured a straight armbar that forced an immediate submission. The fourth Marine was bigger, more cautious, used his size advantage to keep distance. He survived the full 90 seconds, but landed almost nothing clean. Maya controlled the distance flawlessly, picked him apart with precise strikes to nerve clusters and pressure points that left him wincing and favoring his entire left side. By the time the sixth Marine stepped onto the mat, the crowd had gone completely silent. They weren't watching a humiliation anymore. They were watching a masterclass. The seventh Marine was different. Lance Corporal Marcus Webb, 24 years old, fresh back from deployment to Syria. He was a grappler, pure Brazilian jiu-jitsu background, the kind of fighter who lived for ground combat, where size advantages mattered most. He didn't come in aggressive like the others. He circled carefully, hands low, watching Maya's footwork with intelligent eyes. "You're good, ma'am," Webb said quietly, just loud enough for her to hear. "Really good. But everyone has a weakness." Maya said nothing, maintaining her stance. Webb shot in fast, a perfect blast double leg that would have taken down most opponents. But Maya had spent 3 years training with some of the best grapplers in naval special warfare. She sprawled hard, drove her weight down onto his shoulders, then spun behind him for back control. Webb tried to roll, tried to shake her off. She stayed glued to him like a second skin, her hooks in, working for a rear naked choke. He defended intelligently, tucking his chin, protecting his neck. So Maya switched tactics mid-attack, transitioned to a crucifix position, isolating his arm. Webb tapped at 65 seconds, breathing hard. When Maya released him and stood, he looked up at her with genuine respect. "That transition was beautiful, ma'am. Where'd you learn to grapple like that?" "Coronado. We had a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt on my team. He was very generous with his knowledge." Webb nodded, accepting the lesson embedded in that answer. She'd earned these skills through the same hard training they all respected. Then he did something that changed the energy in the entire room. He bowed to her formally before walking off the mat. The crowd's hostility had shifted to something else. Not quite approval, not yet. But the mockery was gone, replaced by uncomfortable recognition that they'd all misjudged this woman badly. Fighter number 8 was Sergeant First Class Antoine Williams, 6'1", 220, all muscle and bad intentions. He'd been talking the loudest before the fight started, absolutely certain Maya would fold within 30 seconds of facing real opposition. He came at her now with everything he had, combinations designed to overwhelm through sheer volume, hooks, uppercuts, knees, elbows, an endless barrage of strikes thrown with genuine intent to hurt. Maya's defense was textbook perfect. Block, parry, slip, roll. She made his aggression work against him, let him burn energy while she stayed economical with her movements. At 45 seconds, Williams was already breathing hard, his combinations getting sloppier. Maya saw the opening she'd been waiting for. He overcommitted to a left hook, his weight too far forward. She delivered a perfectly timed hizageri, a kyokushin knee strike, directly to his liver.
Williams made a sound like all the air had been punched out of his lungs and dropped to one knee, his face going pale, then gray.
A liver shot was one of the most devastating strikes in combat sports. When done correctly, it temporarily paralyzed the entire nervous system. The referee stopped the fight immediately. Williams needed 2 full minutes before he could stand without assistance. Maya stood in her corner, breathing steadily, feeling the toll starting to accumulate in her body. Her old injuries were waking up. The shrapnel scars from Helmand Province. She'd taken fragmentation from an IED that killed 2 Marines standing 10 feet from her. Those scars ached with every deep breath. Her right shoulder, dislocated during a high-altitude parachute malfunction 2 years ago, was starting to protest every block and strike. But her technique hadn't degraded at all. That was the gift Sensei Yamamoto had given her. Discipline that didn't depend on being fresh or uninjured. Discipline that functioned regardless of circumstances. Fighter number 9 stepped up. Corporal David "Tank" Rodriguez, 6'4", 240, looked like he'd been assembled from spare tractor parts. He had a reputation for being the most vicious fighter in Morrison's crew. The kind of Marine who didn't just win fights, he tried to break people. Rodriguez was grinning like this was Christmas morning. "You got lucky so far, ma'am. That ends right now." Maya said nothing, just bowed and reset her stance. "Begin!" Rodriguez came at her like he was trying to run through a brick wall. No technique, no strategy, just raw aggression and overwhelming physical power. He threw a wild haymaker that would have knocked her unconscious if it connected. Maya didn't try to block it. She ducked under the strike, stepped inside his guard, and delivered 3 rapid-fire strikes to his midsection. Left palm heel, right palm heel, knee strike. All of them aimed at the same spot, his solar plexus. Rodriguez grunted but didn't slow down. He grabbed for her, trying to use his size advantage to drag her into a clinch where he could overpower her. Maya dropped her weight, spun out of his grip, and delivered a Mawashi-geri roundhouse kick that caught him perfectly in the thigh, the outside quadricep where the femoral nerve runs closest to the surface. His leg buckled slightly. Not enough to drop him, but enough to compromise his balance. She pressed the attack now, combinations thrown with surgical precision. Front kick to keep distance, roundhouse to the body, spinning back fist that snapped his head sideways. Each strike designed not just to score points, but to accumulate damage, to break down his structure. Rodriguez was tough, she had to give him that. He kept coming, kept throwing wild punches, kept trying to use brute force to overwhelm technique. But at 70 seconds, his cardio failed him. The non-stop aggression had burned through his gas tank. He was sucking wind, his hands dropping, his footwork getting sloppy. Maya saw it and capitalized immediately. She closed distance, caught him with a perfectly executed uchimata, an inner thigh throw, and took him to the ground, hard. He tried to scramble, tried to get back to his feet. She transitioned smoothly to mount position, established control, and delivered 3 controlled strikes to his face. Not hard enough to cause serious injury, but hard enough to demonstrate complete dominance. The referee called it. 5 seconds of dominant position. Fight over. When Maya stood and offered her hand to help Rodriguez up, he stared at it for 3 long seconds like he couldn't quite process what had just happened. Then he took it, let her pull him to his feet. "You fight like a demon, ma'am," he said quietly, all the earlier arrogance gone from his voice. "I've never seen anything like that." "You're strong and aggressive," Maya told him, "but strength without strategy is just wasted energy. Your instructor should teach you to use your power more efficiently." Rodriguez nodded slowly, absorbing the lesson. That made 9. 4 more to go. But Maya could feel it now, the cumulative damage, the exhaustion starting to seep into her muscles. Her knee, the one she'd hyperextended during a parachute landing in Helmand, was starting to throb with every step. Her hands ached from repeated impacts, even through proper conditioning. Sweat soaked through her gi, making the fabric heavy. She had approximately 6 minutes of fighting left. 6 minutes to prove a point that would either change everything or confirm every skeptic's worst assumptions. Fighter number 10 was different from the others. Staff Sergeant Tyrell Jackson, 31 years old, a true martial artist who'd studied multiple disciplines for over 15 years. He was Morrison's best friend, his most trusted instructor, and unlike the others, he walked onto the mat with genuine respect in his eyes. He bowed properly before the fight started. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" "Granted. I don't agree with what Gunny Morrison said to you yesterday. It was disrespectful and unprofessional. But he's my brother, and I owe him my loyalty, so I'm going to fight you with everything I have, and I hope you understand it's not personal." Maya bowed back. "I wouldn't want anything less, Staff Sergeant. Let's show these Marines what real technique looks like." "Begin!" What followed for the next 90 seconds was the most technical, beautiful exchange of martial arts the Quantico facility had probably ever witnessed. Jackson was skilled, genuinely skilled, not just aggressive. He threw combinations with proper setup, maintained excellent distance control, defended intelligently. Maya matched him technique for technique. It became a conversation conducted entirely through movement. Questions asked with strikes, answers given with blocks and counters. Jackson would attempt a sweep. Maya would defend and counter with a throw attempt of her own. She'd throw a combination. He'd slip and respond with precision strikes that forced her to work her defense. Neither fighter dominated. Neither made significant mistakes. It was pure martial arts at the highest level, stripped of ego and showmanship, reduced to its essential truth. Two warriors testing each other's skills with mutual respect. When time was called, both fighters were breathing hard, but neither had been seriously damaged. Jackson bowed deeply, holding Maya's eyes. "You've earned everything you have, ma'am. Anyone who says different is a fool." He raised his voice so the entire gym could hear his next words. "This woman is the real deal, Marines. Pay attention and learn something." The crowd's energy shifted noticeably. Several Marines were nodding. Others looked uncomfortable, probably reassessing their earlier assumptions. But 3 fighters remained. Corporal James Hayes stepped up next, a Muay Thai specialist who'd spent 2 years training in Thailand before joining the Marines. He came out aggressive from the opening bell, throwing devastating low kicks designed to chop down Maya's base. She checked most of them, her shins taking brutal impacts that would leave bone-deep bruises. But checking kicks was only a defensive strategy. She needed to end this fight quickly before the cumulative leg damage compromised her mobility. Hayes threw another low kick. This time, Maya didn't check it. She let it connect with her thigh, accepting the pain, using the moment of his commitment to close distance and deliver a perfectly timed flying knee that caught him square in the chest. Hayes went down hard, the wind completely knocked out of him. The referee stopped the fight at 41 seconds. Fighter number 12. Sergeant Michael Torres, a boxer with 14 amateur fights and hands fast enough to make professional trainers take notice. He used footwork and angles, staying mobile, throwing sharp combinations designed to overwhelm her defense through sheer speed. Maya adjusted her strategy. She stopped trying to counter-strike and focused entirely on defense and distance management. Let him throw. Let him work. Let him burn energy. Torres was faster than her, but speed meant nothing if you couldn't land clean shots. At 60 seconds, his combinations were slowing. At 75 seconds, Maya saw her opening. Torres threw a jab cross combination, and she slipped both punches, stepped inside his guard, and delivered an oizuki, a Kyokushin straight punch, directly to his sternum. The impact echoed through the facility. Torres stumbled backward, his eyes wide with shock, his chest already bruising. Time was called 5 seconds later. That made 12. One fighter remained. The crowd had gone absolutely silent. 200 Marines holding their collective breath, watching something none of them had believed possible. Derek Morrison stepped onto the mat for the second time, and this time his expression was completely different. The arrogance was gone. The mockery was gone. What remained was something complex and painful. A man confronting the uncomfortable reality that everything he'd believed about this woman was wrong. Maya could see it in his eyes. He didn't want to fight her again, not because he was afraid of losing, he'd already lost once, but because continuing this challenge now felt wrong in a way he couldn't articulate. But his pride wouldn't let him back down, neither would the expectations of every Marine watching. They stood across from each other, two warriors who'd both sacrificed more than most people could comprehend in service to their country, both carrying scars, visible and invisible. Both representing something larger than themselves. Master Sergeant Reyes approached the center of the mat, his expression grave. Master Guns, you have the option to concede. Lieutenant Nakamura has proven her point 13 times over. There's no shame in acknowledging that. Morrison's jaw tightened. No, Master Sergeant. I made a challenge. I'll see it through. Reyes looked at Maya. Lieutenant, you've been fighting for over 18 minutes straight. You're injured. I can see you favoring that left knee. You've got nothing left to prove. You can stop this right now. Maya shook her head. This isn't about proving anything anymore, Master Sergeant. This is about finishing what I started. She looked directly at Morrison. You said I only got this position because my father died a hero. You said I was coasting on his reputation. You said I couldn't actually fight. Her voice dropped, became quiet, but carried to every corner of the facility. Were you wrong, Master Gunnery Sergeant? Morrison stood there, every eye in the building locked on him, waiting for his answer. His fists clenched and unclenched at his sides. His breathing was rough, ragged. When he finally spoke, the words sounded like they were being physically torn out of him. I was wrong, ma'am. Then this fight is over, Maya said simply. You've acknowledged the truth. That's all that matters. She bowed formally to him, the traditional sign of respect at the conclusion of combat. Morrison stared at her for 5 long seconds. Then, slowly, deliberately, he bowed back. Properly, the way a martial artist should. The crowd erupted, not cheering exactly. This wasn't a victory celebration. It was something else. Recognition, acknowledgement. The sound of 200 people simultaneously realizing they'd witnessed something important. But before the noise could fully build, Morrison raised his hand for silence. The Marines quieted instantly, conditioned by years of military discipline to respond to that gesture. Morrison's voice, when he spoke, was tight with emotion he was barely containing. I need to say something. All of you need to hear this. He looked at Maya, and something in his expression cracked, not broke, cracked, like ice on a frozen lake when the temperature finally shifts. 3 years ago, my fiancée was killed in Syria. Captain Sarah Mitchell. She was Marine intelligence, attached to a joint task force. She provided intel to a Navy SEAL element about a high-value target, told them the building they wanted to raid was rigged with explosives, told them they needed to adjust their approach. Morrison's voice was getting rougher, harder to control. The team leader ignored her assessment, said she was being overcautious, ran the raid anyway. He paused, visibly struggling. The building detonated. Sarah was inside, providing real-time intelligence support. She died, along with 2 SEALs and 4 Rangers. The investigation determined the team leader's decision was reckless. The gym was absolutely silent now. Even the industrial fans seemed quieter. I blamed the SEALs, all of them. Decided they were arrogant and reckless and didn't respect anyone who wasn't part of their community. Morrison's hands were shaking now. When I found out they were sending a Navy SEAL to teach Marines how to fight, I wanted her to fail. Wanted to prove that SEALs weren't as good as they thought they were. That Sarah was right to doubt them. He looked directly at Maya, and there were tears on his face now. Actual tears, running down the cheeks of a master gunnery sergeant in front of 200 Marines, and he didn't bother wiping them away. But you're not the person who got Sarah killed, ma'am. You're not responsible for one team leader's bad decision. And I had no right to make you carry the weight of my anger. Morrison's voice broke completely. Sarah would have respected the hell out of you. She would have said you earned everything you have through competence and discipline. And she would have been ashamed of how I treated you. The silence in that moment was absolute, sacred almost. Maya walked across the mat slowly, deliberately, until she stood directly in front of Morrison. She was so much smaller than him, barely came up to his chest. But somehow in that moment, she seemed larger. Your fiancée died serving her country with honor, Maya said quietly. That matters. That will always matter. And you're right, I'm not responsible for her death. But neither are you. Morrison's breath hitched. You're carrying guilt that isn't yours to carry, Maya continued. Survivor's guilt. Anger at a situation you couldn't control. That's normal. That's human. But it's also destroying you from the inside. And I guarantee you that Captain Mitchell wouldn't want that. She paused, letting him process those words. I didn't know your fiancé, Master Gunnery Sergeant. But I know Marines. And if she was as good as you say she was, then she wouldn't want you living in the shadow of what you couldn't prevent. She'd want you moving forward, becoming the leader and the Marine she believed you could be. Morrison's shoulders shook. He was crying openly now, and he didn't care who saw it. Maya's voice softened even further. You asked me yesterday if I earned my position, or if I was riding my father's reputation. Here's the truth. I spent 7 years trying to honor his sacrifice by becoming the warrior he raised me to be. 7 years fighting to prove I belonged. 7 years carrying the weight of his Medal of Honor like it was my personal responsibility. Her hand moved unconsciously to her left side, where shrapnel scars marred her ribcage beneath the gi. It took me a long time to understand that honoring his memory didn't mean living up to some impossible standard. It meant embodying the principles he believed in. Service, discipline, putting the mission above personal comfort. That's what he gave his life for, not so I could be perfect, so I could be dedicated. She met Morrison's eyes. Stop trying to avenge Captain Mitchell's death. Start honoring her life by being the Marine she fell in love with. That's how you give her sacrifice meaning. Morrison stood there, shaking, processing. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the facility, including Maya. He dropped to one knee in front of her. Teach me, he said, his voice raw and broken and sincere. Not how to fight. I know how to fight. Teach me discipline. Teach me how to carry this weight without letting it destroy me. Teach me what real strength looks like. Maya looked down at this massive, devastated man kneeling in front of her and felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't about winning anymore. This wasn't about proving her competence or earning respect or defending her father's legacy. This was about using her skills, all of them, not just martial arts, to help another warrior find their way back from the darkness. "Stand up, Master Gunnery Sergeant," she said firmly. "Marines don't kneel. Not to me. Not to anyone." Morrison stood slowly, his face a mess of tears and snot and raw emotion. "If you want to learn," Maya continued, "then you show up Monday morning at 0600 and you train with the same discipline you expect from every Marine under your command. I'll teach you everything I know. But you have to do the work. You have to choose to move forward instead of staying trapped in the past." Morrison nodded, unable to speak. Maya turned to address the entire facility. "I'm not here to replace your instructors or prove the Navy is better than the Marine Corps. I'm here because someone decided that sharing knowledge between services makes all of us more effective at our mission. You can accept that, or you can fight it. But if you fight it, you're the one who loses the opportunity to learn something valuable." She paused, making eye contact with Marines scattered throughout the crowd. "I fought 13 of your best today, not to humiliate them, to demonstrate that competence transcends assumptions. Size doesn't determine ability. Gender doesn't determine skill. What determines whether you can do this job is discipline, training, and the refusal to quit when everything in your body is screaming at you to stop." Her voice grew stronger. "My father died in Kandahar. Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison's fiancée died in Syria. How many of you have lost brothers, sisters, teammates? How many of you carry scars from battles you can't forget?" Hands started rising throughout the crowd, more than half the Marines present. "We all carry weight," Maya said quietly. "Every single one of us. The question isn't whether you're carrying it. The question is whether you're letting it make you stronger or whether you're letting it break you down." She looked back at Morrison. "Class starts Monday at 600. Everyone's invited. Come ready to work, ready to learn, and ready to leave your ego at the door. Because I promise you this, the techniques I'm going to teach might save your life someday when you're out of ammunition and the enemy is 3 feet away with a knife." Master Sergeant Reyes stepped forward, his voice cutting through the emotional intensity. "Marines, you are dismissed. Clear this facility. Move." The crowd began filing out slowly, still processing what they'd witnessed. Several Marines approached Maya to shake her hand or apologize. Morrison's 12 fighters each came up individually, showing respect in a way they absolutely wouldn't have 2 hours ago. When most of them had left, Morrison lingered near the edge of the mat. He looked like he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Maya walked over to him, moving carefully on her injured knee. "That technique I used on Torres, the straight punch to the sternum, that's called oizuki in Kyokushin. Maximum power delivered through proper hip rotation and breath control. I can teach it to your instructors if you want to integrate it into your curriculum." Morrison nodded slowly. "I'd appreciate that, ma'am." He turned to leave, then stopped. "Lieutenant, your father would be proud of what you did here today. Not just the fighting, the way you handled it. The way you treated us with respect, even after I treated you like garbage. That took more discipline than any martial arts technique." Maya felt something tighten in her chest. "Thank you, Master Gunnery Sergeant. That means more than you know." After Morrison left, Maya stood alone in the center of the mat, breathing carefully through the pain in her ribs, her knee, her shoulder. Every injury she'd accumulated over 7 years of combat operations was announcing its presence simultaneously. But she was still standing, still functional, still ready for whatever came next. That was discipline. That was the gift Sensei Yamamoto had given her. Master Sergeant Reyes approached quietly. "Medical standing by if you need treatment, ma'am."
"I'm fine, Master Sergeant. Nothing that ice and ibuprofen won't handle."
Reyes smiled slightly. "You just fought 13 trained killers for 19 minutes straight while injured. Fine is not the word I'd use, but I'm starting to understand that you and I define that word very differently." Maya almost laughed.
"Probably accurate."
"For what it's worth, Lieutenant, you've earned more respect in the last hour than most officers earn in an entire career. Those Marines will follow you anywhere now. Morrison especially. I'm not here for followers, Master Sergeant. I'm here to teach skills that keep people alive. That's the only thing that matters." Reyes nodded, something like pride showing in his weathered face. "Your old man really did raise you right." After he left, Maya finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she'd just done. Not the physical exhaustion, that was manageable. The emotional toll of carrying her father's legacy, of confronting Morrison's grief, of making herself vulnerable in front of people who wanted to see her fail. She looked down at her hands. The knuckles were swollen, already bruising. The same hands that had killed 3 enemy combatants in close-quarters combat in Helmand Province. The same hands that had pulled wounded teammates out of burning vehicles. The same hands her father had held when she was a child, teaching her that strength came from discipline, not anger. She'd honored him today, not by winning fights, by demonstrating the principles he'd lived by. That was enough. That had to be enough. 3 months passed like water through fingers, and everything changed. The Martial Arts Center of Excellence transformed from a place of skepticism and hostility into something Maya barely recognized. Monday mornings at 0600 hours, the facility packed with Marines who actually wanted to learn, instead of Marines forced to attend mandatory training. The difference was palpable. You could feel it in the energy, see it in the way people moved, hear it in the questions they asked. Derek Morrison showed up every single day without fail. Rain, shine, nursing injuries, fighting through exhaustion that came from working 16-hour days trying to be both a student and a senior instructor. He absorbed Maya's teachings like a man dying of thirst who'd finally found water. But more importantly, he'd stopped carrying Sarah's death like a weapon he could use to hurt himself with. "Again," Maya said, watching Morrison demonstrate a wrist lock technique to a class of 30 Marines. "Your positioning is off by maybe 2 inches. That's the difference between control and giving your opponent an escape route." Morrison adjusted, his massive hands making the subtle shift. "Like this, ma'am?" "Perfect. Now show them the counter if someone tries to muscle out of it instead of tapping." Morrison flowed through the demonstration with precision that would have been impossible 3 months ago. He'd always had strength and aggression. Now he had technique and discipline to channel those attributes properly. After class ended and most of the Marines had cleared out, Morrison approached Maya with an expression that told her something was on his mind. "Permission to speak freely, ma'am?" "Always, Master Guns." "I've been thinking about something you said after the fights, about how honoring someone's memory means embodying the principles they believed in, not living up to some impossible standard." Morrison's jaw tightened slightly. "I want to start a foundation in Sarah's name. Something that helps special operations personnel deal with PTSD and survivor's guilt. Real help, not just the standard military mental health resources that most of us don't trust." Maya studied his face. The pain was still there. It would probably always be there. But it wasn't consuming him anymore. "That's a powerful idea. What do you need from me?" "Honestly, just permission to use what you've taught me. The discipline techniques, the breath control, the meditation practices from Kyokushin. I've been using them to manage my own trauma,
and they work better than anything the Corps ever gave me. I think other people could benefit.
You don't need my permission for that, Master Guns. That knowledge belongs to everyone willing to do the work to understand it. But I'll help however I can. My sensei in Tokyo runs programs exactly like what you're describing. I can connect you with him. Morrison's expression shifted to something that might have been gratitude or relief, or both.
Thank you, ma'am. That would mean everything.
Sarah would be proud of you, Maya said quietly.
You're taking your pain and turning it into something that helps other people. That's the definition of honorable service.
Morrison nodded, not trusting himself to speak. But their conversation was interrupted by Master Sergeant Reyes, who came striding across the training floor with an expression that told Maya something was wrong. Lieutenant, we've got a situation. Major General Brock just arrived on base unannounced. He's demanding to observe your training program immediately. Maya felt ice water dump into her stomach. Major General Harold Brock was old-school Marine Corps, the kind of officer who'd spent 40 years in service and hadn't updated his thinking about women in combat since roughly 1985. He had a reputation for shutting down programs he considered political correctness, masquerading as military readiness. Did he say what prompted this visit?
No, ma'am, but his aide mentioned something about verifying the efficacy of integrated training protocols before the program gets expanded fleet-wide.
Reyes's expression was grim.
Which is bureaucratic speak for, I'm here to find reasons to kill this program.
Morrison stepped forward. With respect, Master Sergeant, the General can verify whatever he wants. We've got nothing to hide. This program works. The metrics prove it.
Metrics don't mean much to generals who've already made up their minds,
Reyes said flatly. Maya's mind was already racing through scenarios, calculating angles of attack, anticipating objections. When does he want to observe? He's in the Commandant's office right now. Observation starts in 90 minutes. Then we have 90 minutes to prepare. Get me Morrison's best 12 students. I want them running demonstration drills that showcase what they've actually learned, not performance theater designed to impress visiting brass. Reyes nodded and moved to execute. Morrison stayed behind, his expression troubled. Ma'am, Brock has a reputation. He shut down 3 different programs in the last 2 years that involved female integration. He's not here to give you a fair evaluation. He's here to find ammunition. I know exactly who he is, Master Guns. Maya's voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. Which is why we're not going to give him anything except undeniable competence. Get your people ready. 90 minutes later, Major General Harold Brock walked into the training facility like he owned not just the building, but the entire concept of military excellence. He was 62 years old, built like a fire hydrant, with steel gray hair cut high and tight, and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite by someone who specialized in disapproving expressions. 2 aides flanked him, both lieutenant colonels, both carrying tablets to take notes on everything they observed. Master Sergeant Reyes and the facility commandant, a colonel named Patterson, trailed behind, looking like they were attending a funeral. Maya stood at attention, her uniform perfect, her bearing professional. Morrison and his 12 students were positioned on the main mat, ready to demonstrate techniques. Lieutenant Nakamura, Brock said, his voice like gravel in a cement mixer. I'm here to evaluate whether this integrated training program is actually improving combat readiness, or whether it's just another diversity innovation disguised as tactical innovation. Maya didn't flinch. Understood, sir. We're prepared to demonstrate our curriculum and answer any questions you have. Brock's eyes narrowed. I've read your service record. Impressive on paper. 3 deployments, Bronze Star with V device, your father's Medal of Honor. But I've also read the after-action reports from commanders who served with female SEAL candidates. Mixed results, at best. With respect, sir, I can only speak to my own performance, not anyone else's.
If you have specific concerns about my qualifications or this program's effectiveness, I'm happy to address them. Your qualifications aren't in question, Lieutenant. Your judgment is. Specifically, your decision to challenge 13 Marine black belts to sequential combat on your first day at this facility. That sounds like showboating to me. Attention-seeking behavior that prioritizes personal ego over professional conduct. Morrison's jaw tightened visibly, but he remained silent. Maya kept her voice level.
Sir, I was publicly told that I only received this assignment because my father died a hero, and that my competence was questionable at best. I responded to that disrespect by demonstrating capability through the only language Marines universally respect: performance under pressure. It wasn't showboating, it was establishing credibility. You established something, Brock said coldly. Whether it was credibility or just your willingness to put on a performance is what I'm here to determine. He turned to Morrison. Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison, you were the one who challenged Lieutenant Nakamura initially, correct?
Yes, sir.
And now you're her assistant instructor. That's quite a turnaround. Mind explaining what changed?
Morrison met the general's stare without wavering. What changed, sir, is that Lieutenant Nakamura proved she possesses skills and discipline that make me a more effective Marine. She didn't just beat me in combat.
She taught me techniques that have made my entire team more lethal and more survivable. That's worth more than my pride. Or maybe she just broke you down psychologically until you accepted a narrative that makes the Navy look good at the Marine Corps' expense. Morrison's expression went cold. Sir, with all due respect, nobody breaks me down. I chose to learn from Lieutenant Nakamura because refusing to learn from qualified instructors, regardless of their service branch or gender, would make me a worse Marine and a worse leader. That's a choice based on professional judgment, not psychological manipulation. Brock's face darkened. Watch your tone, Master Guns. I'm watching my words very carefully, sir. I'm stating facts about program effectiveness based on 3 months of direct observation and participation. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Brock looked like he wanted to relieve Morrison on the spot, but doing so would only prove Morrison's point about bias overriding professional assessment. Instead, Brock turned back to Maya. Fine. Show me what you've got, Lieutenant. Demonstrate these supposedly revolutionary techniques. But I want realistic scenarios, not rehearsed demonstrations designed to impress visiting brass. Maya nodded to Morrison, who stepped onto the mat with Staff Sergeant Tyrell Jackson, the same Marine who'd fought her with genuine respect 3 months ago. Sir, this drill demonstrates integrated grappling and striking techniques for close-quarters combat when ammunition is depleted or weapons are compromised. Staff Sergeant Jackson will attack with intent to incapacitate. Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison will defend and counter using techniques from the curriculum. Proceed, Brock said, his tone suggesting he expected to be underwhelmed. Jackson came at Morrison fast, shooting for a takedown, then transitioning to strikes when the takedown was stuffed. Morrison defended smoothly, used proper positioning to neutralize size advantages, then executed a beautiful throw-to-submission sequence that ended with Jackson tapping out. They reset and went again, this time with Jackson using weapons, training knives, improvised clubs. Morrison demonstrated disarms and counters that were brutally efficient, nothing flashy, just techniques designed to keep you alive when everything had gone wrong. After 6 minutes of continuous demonstration, both Marines were breathing hard, but their technique hadn't degraded. That was the marker of real skill, performance under fatigue. Brock watched with an expression that revealed absolutely nothing. When Morrison and Jackson finished, he turned to one of his aides. Colonel Martinez, your assessment? The aide, a weathered infantry officer who looked like he'd spent more time in combat zones than garrison, consulted his tablet. Sir, the techniques are sound. proper integration of multiple martial arts disciplines. The fatigue management and technique retention are significantly above baseline for standard MCMAP instruction. Brock grunted. Show me something with weapons. Real weapons, not training equipment. Maya gestured to two more Marines, who brought out decommissioned rifles and pistols, modified for force-on-force training. What followed was a demonstration of weapon retention and disarming techniques under stress, Marines attacking each other with genuine aggression, using tactics that mimicked real combat scenarios. The techniques Maya had taught were evident in every exchange: better positioning, superior leverage application, economy of motion that conserved energy while maximizing effectiveness. After 20 minutes of demonstrations, Brock raised his hand for a halt. The Marines stopped immediately, returning to attention. Lieutenant Nakamura, I'm not impressed by rehearsed demonstrations. Anyone can look good executing pre-planned sequences. What I want to see is whether your training translates to real-world application under pressure. Maya kept her expression neutral. What did you have in mind, sir? Brock's smile was predatory. A practical assessment. You and Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison against 8 of my personal security detail. Scenario-based force-on-force combat. Simulated hostage rescue with active resistance. If your training is as effective as you claim, this should be straightforward. Morrison's eyes widened slightly. Brock's security detail were all Force Recon Marines, the Marine Corps' elite Special Operations Unit. 8 of them against 2 instructors was deliberately overwhelming the odds. This wasn't an assessment. It was a setup designed to create failure. Sir, Colonel Patterson interjected carefully, that scenario seems disproportionately weighted. The battlefield is disproportionately weighted, Colonel. That's why we train. Lieutenant Nakamura claims her methods improve combat effectiveness. Let's test that claim under realistic pressure. Brock looked at Maya. Unless you'd prefer to decline? Every person in the room understood what was happening. Accept the challenge and risk public failure that would kill the program. Decline and confirm Brock's suspicion that this was all performance theater with no substance. Maya met Morrison's eyes. They'd worked together for 3 months now, developed the kind of nonverbal communication that came from training together daily. She could see him calculating the same variables she was. 8 Force Recon Marines, scenario-based combat, hostile evaluator looking for any excuse to shut them down. Morrison gave her the slightest nod. His expression said, I'm with you, whatever you decide. Maya turned back to Brock. We accept, sir. What are the scenario parameters? Brock's smile widened. Simulated building entry. 2 hostages secured in a central room. 8 hostiles providing security. You and Morrison have to breach, neutralize all hostiles without killing the hostages, and extract. Force-on-force ammunition, full protective gear. You have 10 minutes to plan and execute. Rules of engagement? Same as real-world direct action. Controlled pairs, proper target identification, no unnecessary force. My Marines will resist with everything they've got. If they kill you or the hostages, the scenario is failed. Maya nodded slowly. Understood, sir. We'll need 5 minutes to review the facility layout and coordinate our approach. You've got 3 minutes. Clock starts now. Morrison and Maya moved to a corner of the facility, speaking in low, urgent tones, while Brock's 8 Force Recon Marines geared up with smug confidence. They clearly thought this was going to be easy. 2 instructors against 8 of the Marine Corps' best. This is a setup, Morrison said quietly. Even if we execute perfectly, he'll find something to criticize. 8 against 2 in a hostage scenario? That's borderline impossible. Borderline impossible is not the same as actually impossible, Maya countered. We've got 3 months of training together. We know each other's timing, each our instincts. They've got numbers and skill.
but they don't have coordination with us. What's the plan? Maya's mind was racing through scenarios, tactics, variables. We use their confidence against them. They expect us to come in aggressive, trying to overwhelm through speed. Instead, we go slow, methodical. Force them to make mistakes.
You take point for breaching. I'll handle rear security and target discrimination. We communicate constantly. Move as one unit. Morrison nodded. Speed is fine. Violence of action is fine, but only when it serves the objective.
Exactly.
Maya checked her protective gear one final time.
And, Morrison, whatever happens in there, we trust each other completely. No second guessing, no hesitation. We're either a team or we're two individuals. Teams win. Individuals die.
Hurrah, ma'am! Brock's voice cut across the facility. Time's up! Positions! The scenario building was a mock-up of a typical Middle Eastern structure. Concrete walls, narrow hallways, multiple rooms. Brock's 8 Marines positioned themselves strategically, 2 guarding the hostage room directly, 2 providing overwatch from elevated positions, 4 roaming as a quick reaction force. Maya and Morrison stacked up outside the main entrance, weapons ready, breathing controlled. The timer started. Morrison breached the door with a controlled kick, not the explosive Hollywood version, but proper technique that compromised the lock while maintaining his balance. Maya flowed in behind him immediately, scanning corners, clearing angles. The first hostile appeared from a side room, weapon raised. Morrison put 2 simulated rounds center mass before the Marine could fire. The training ammunition marked him as killed. He raised his hands and stepped aside, out of the scenario. They moved deeper into the structure, communicating through hand signals and whispered words. Corner left. Hallway clear. Contact right. The second and third hostiles tried to set up an ambush in a narrow corridor, using superior angles and crossfire. But Maya had anticipated the tactic. She deployed a flashbang simulator, creating disorientation without actual danger. And Morrison exploited the confusion to neutralize both targets with precise shot placement. 5 hostiles down. 3 remaining, plus the 2 hostages they absolutely could not harm. The next section was the hard part. A large central room with the hostages secured in the middle, 2 armed guards flanking them, and the last hostile positioned on an elevated catwalk providing overwatch. Standard room-clearing doctrine said you went in fast and aggressive, overwhelming defenders before they could react. But with hostages in the mix and an elevated shooter, standard doctrine would get people killed. Maya and Morrison paused outside the room, using a small mirror to assess positions. She could see the setup, deliberately designed to force a choice between speed and safety. Overwatch first, Maya whispered. I can take the elevated position from the doorway if you draw their attention. Morrison didn't hesitate. On your mark. Maya counted down silently with her fingers. 3, 2, 1. Morrison burst through the doorway, moving hard left, drawing both floor-level guards' attention. They swung their weapons toward him, exactly as predicted. Maya came through a fraction of a second behind, already tracking the elevated shooter. She put 2 rounds on target before he could acquire Morrison. The Marine on the catwalk raised his hands, acknowledged as eliminated. Morrison engaged the 2 floor guards simultaneously. 1 round each, center mass, textbook shooting. Both guards dropped their weapons. Scenario over. Total elapsed time from breach to hostage secured, 4 minutes, 37 seconds. 0 friendly casualties. 0 hostage casualties. 8 hostile forces neutralized. The room went absolutely silent. Brock's Force Recon Marines were staring at Maya and Morrison with expressions ranging from shock to grudging respect. Nobody had expected two instructors, one of them a 5'3" woman, to systematically dismantle 8 elite operators in under 5 minutes. Brock himself looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. His plan had backfired spectacularly. Instead of exposing weaknesses, he'd just witnessed a demonstration of exactly the kind of tactical excellence he'd claimed to doubt. Colonel Martinez, the aide who'd been taking notes, approached Brock carefully.
Sir, that was exceptional. The coordination, the target discrimination, the tactical patience. I've rarely seen better execution, even from dedicated special operations units.
Brock's jaw worked like he was chewing gravel. He wanted to argue, wanted to find fault, but there was nothing to criticize. The execution had been flawless. Finally, he turned to Maya and Morrison, who stood at attention, waiting for his assessment. "Acceptable," Brock said, the word clearly causing him physical pain. "Your performance was acceptable." Morrison's expression didn't change, but Maya could feel his barely contained rage at the dismissiveness. They'd just executed a near-impossible scenario perfectly, and the general's response was acceptable? But before Maya could respond, one of Brock's own Marines, a gunnery sergeant who'd been playing a hostile guard, stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, that wasn't just acceptable. That was the best tactical execution I've witnessed outside of actual combat. The way they moved together, anticipated each other's actions, maintained discipline under pressure. That's the definition of elite performance." Brock's face darkened. "Return to your position, gunnery sergeant." "Sir, I'm simply providing my professional assessment as requested." "I said, return to your position. That's an order." The gunnery sergeant's jaw tightened, but he complied. The message was clear. Brock didn't want honest assessment. He wanted validation of predetermined conclusions. Maya felt something cold settle in her chest. This wasn't about program effectiveness or combat readiness. This was about an old man protecting his worldview against evidence that contradicted it. But she'd learned something in 7 years of service. Sometimes you couldn't win by proving you were right. Sometimes you had to let the truth speak for itself and trust that good people would recognize it. "Sir," Maya said carefully, "thank you for the opportunity to demonstrate our curriculum under realistic conditions. If you have additional assessments you'd like us to complete, we're prepared to execute them." Brock studied her with cold eyes. "That won't be necessary, Lieutenant. I've seen what I came to see. My report will be submitted to the Commandant within 48 hours. He turned and walked out without another word, his aides scrambling to follow. The room exhaled collectively. Morrison looked at Maya with an expression that said everything. We did everything right, and it still wasn't enough. But Master Sergeant Reyes approached with something unexpected in his eyes. Not defeat, but calculation. "Lieutenant, Master Guns, that gunnery sergeant who spoke up? That's Gunnery Sergeant Alex Torres. He's Brock's senior enlisted advisor. Been with him for 3 years. For him to contradict the general publicly like that says something important." "What does it say, Master Sergeant?" Maya asked. "It says even Brock's own people know the truth. And truth has a way of getting out, regardless of what gets written in official reports." Maya wanted to believe that, wanted to think that competence and evidence would triumph over bias and predetermined conclusions. But she'd seen too many good programs destroyed by politics, too many qualified people sacrificed to protect outdated thinking. All she could do now was wait for Brock's report and hope that the truth actually mattered to the people who made decisions. Morrison put his hand on her shoulder briefly, a gesture of solidarity and shared frustration. "Whatever happens, ma'am, you built something real here.
That doesn't disappear just because some general refuses to acknowledge it. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. But deep in her gut, she knew this fight was far from over. 48 hours felt like 48 years. Maya threw herself into training, teaching classes with the same intensity she always had, but everyone could feel the tension underneath. Marines who'd never cared about politics before were suddenly asking questions about how program evaluations worked, whether one general's opinion could kill an entire initiative, what happened to instructors when their programs got shut down. Morrison was quieter than usual, his jaw tight with the kind of controlled fury that came from watching something you believed in get dismantled by people who refused to see its value. On the morning of the third day, Master Sergeant Reyes found Maya in her office, staring at paperwork she wasn't actually reading. "Lieutenant, you need to see this." He handed her his tablet. On the screen was an email chain that had somehow leaked from Brock's staff, his official report to the Marine Corps Commandant. Maya read it once, then read it again to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. The report acknowledged the acceptable tactical performance during the hostage scenario, but questioned whether the program represented efficient use of resources given the statistical rarity of female personnel in combat roles. It recommended comprehensive review of the program's continuation, which was bureaucratic code for gradual dismantling through administrative obstacles. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the final paragraph, where Brock suggested that Morrison's reversal of position regarding the instructor's competence indicated possible inappropriate fraternization or undue influence that warranted investigation. Maya felt rage burn through her chest like acid. Brock couldn't attack her competence, the evidence was too strong. So instead, he was implying that she'd manipulated Morrison through improper means. It was character assassination dressed up as professional concern. "He's saying I seduced Morrison into supporting me," Maya said flatly. "That's what this is." Reyes's expression was grim. "That's how I read it too, ma'am. It's bullshit. And anyone who spent 5 minutes watching you two work together knows it's bullshit. But mud sticks even when it's fabricated." "Does Morrison know?" "Not yet, but he will within the hour. This email chain is spreading through the base faster than wildfire." Maya stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "I need to talk to him before he hears it from someone else." She found Morrison in the main training facility, running a junior class through basic striking combinations. His technique was flawless now. 3 months of dedicated practice had transformed his raw aggression into disciplined precision. Maya waited until the class took a water break, then pulled him aside. "We need to talk. Privately." Morrison's expression shifted immediately to concern. "What happened?" They moved to an empty office. Maya handed him the tablet without preamble. Morrison read Brock's report in silence, his face gradually turning red, then purple, then a shade that didn't have a name in any color spectrum Maya knew. "That motherfucker," Morrison said quietly, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. "That absolute motherfucker. Master Guns, he's implying we're sleeping together. That's what inappropriate fraternization means. He's saying you manipulated me with sex because he can't handle the fact that I learned something from a woman." Morrison's hands were trembling. "I'm going to kill him. I'm literally going to find that general and kill him with my bare hands." "You're not going to do any such thing," Maya said firmly. "That's exactly what he wants. Some kind of explosive response that proves we're emotionally compromised and unprofessional." "Then what are we supposed to do? Let him destroy your career and mine with lies?" "We respond with the truth. We document everything. We get statements from every Marine who's trained with us. We build a case so airtight that nobody can ignore it." Morrison was pacing now, his movements aggressive and agitated. "You don't understand how this works, ma'am. In the military, accusations like this stick, even when they're completely false. People hear inappropriate fraternization, and they make assumptions.
Your reputation gets destroyed, and mine right along with it.
I understand perfectly, Maya said, her voice harder than she intended. I've been dealing with this shit since BUD/S. You think Brock is the first person to imply I'm using sexuality to advance my career? I had a BUD/S instructor tell me that the only reason I'd made it through Hell Week was because I was sleeping with the commanding officer. Completely fabricated, completely baseless, but the rumors spread anyway.
Morrison stopped pacing. What happened to the instructor?
Court-martialed and dishonorably discharged after 6 other women came forward with similar stories. Turns out he'd been harassing female candidates for years, and everyone knew, but nobody did anything until someone finally forced the issue.
So you're saying we should go public? Force the issue?
Maya shook her head. I'm saying we should do exactly what we've been doing. Demonstrate competence so overwhelming that the truth becomes undeniable.
Brock wants us to respond emotionally, to give him ammunition. We don't give him anything except continued professional excellence. Morrison looked at her like she'd suggested they grow wings and fly. Ma'am, with all due respect, that's not enough. The system is rigged. One general's opinion carries more weight than 100 Marines saying your program works.
Then we change who's listening.
Before Morrison could ask what that meant, Reyes appeared in the doorway, his expression urgent.
Lieutenant, you've got a visitor. She's waiting in your office. Said it was critical that she speak with you immediately.
Who is it?
Brigadier General Andrea Chen, Marine Corps Headquarters.
Maya's stomach dropped. General Chen was the deputy commander of Marine Corps Training and Education Command, one of the most powerful officers in the entire Corps when it came to training programs and curriculum development. She was also known for being brutally honest, politically savvy, and completely intolerant of incompetence, regardless of who was demonstrating it. If Chen was here, things were either about to get much better or catastrophically worse. Maya straightened her uniform and headed to her office, Morrison and Reyes following close behind. Brigadier General Andrea Chen was 53 years old, 5'6", with black hair going silver at the temples, and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She was standing in Maya's office studying the training certificates on the wall with the kind of focus that suggested she was gathering intelligence, not just killing time.
General Chen, Maya said, coming to attention. Lieutenant Nakamura reporting as requested, ma'am.
Chen turned, and her expression was completely unreadable.
At ease, Lieutenant. Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison, Master Sergeant Reyes, close the door and have a seat.
What I'm about to discuss doesn't leave this room until I say otherwise. They sat. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Chen pulled out her own tablet and set it on Maya's desk.
I've read General Brock's report. I've also read the unofficial after-action reports from his security detail, the Marines who participated in your hostage rescue scenario. Want to guess which version I find more credible? Maya kept her expression neutral. I couldn't speculate, ma'am. Don't play politics with me, Lieutenant. You're not good at it, and I don't have patience for it. Chen's voice was sharp, but not hostile. Brock's report is a masterclass in damning with faint praise while planting seeds of doubt about your professional conduct. The unofficial reports from his Marines describe your performance as some of the best tactical execution they've witnessed outside of actual combat zones. She paused, letting that sink in.
So here's my question. Which version is true? Are you a competent instructor whose program works? Or are you a diversity hire who's manipulating senior enlisted personnel through inappropriate relationships? Morrison started to speak, but Chen cut him off with a raised hand. I wasn't asking you, Master Guns. I was asking Lieutenant Nakamura. Answer the question. Maya met Chen's stare without flinching.
Ma'am, I'm a competent instructor running an effective program that integrates proven martial arts techniques with existing Marine Corps doctrine. The results speak for themselves. Improved performance metrics, higher skill retention, better tactical execution under pressure. Whether people want to acknowledge those results or not doesn't change their validity. And the fraternization allegations? Completely baseless, ma'am. Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison is my assistant instructor and training partner. Our relationship is entirely professional. Anyone suggesting otherwise is either misinformed or deliberately lying. Chen's eyes shifted to Morrison. You agree with that assessment, Master Guns? Absolutely, ma'am. Lieutenant Nakamura has conducted herself with complete professionalism since day one. The suggestion of anything inappropriate is insulting to both of us. Chen nodded slowly. Good, because I was prepared to relieve both of you immediately if either of you gave me any reason to doubt that answer. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the training facility where Marines were running through drills. I'm going to tell you something that doesn't leave this room. General Brock's report isn't the only evaluation I've received. Over the past week, I've gotten unsolicited emails from 47 Marines who've trained in your program. All of them praising the instruction, the curriculum, the results. Several of them explicitly contradicting Brock's implications. Maya felt something cautiously hopeful stir in her chest. Additionally, Chen continued, Gunnery Sergeant Torres, Brock's own senior enlisted advisor, submitted a separate report directly to my office. He detailed the hostage scenario, your tactical execution, and his professional assessment that Brock's evaluation was influenced by personal bias rather than objective observation. That's a career-ending move for a gunnery sergeant, contradicting his commanding general like that. Morrison leaned forward. Why would he do that, ma'am? Because some Marines still believe integrity matters more than career advancement. Chen turned back to face them. Torres also informed me that Brock had decided to shut down your program before he even arrived at Quantico. The evaluation was theater, designed to create justification for a predetermined conclusion. Then why are we still sitting here? Morrison's voice was tight with frustration. If you know Brock's report is bullshit, why haven't you overruled it? Chen's expression hardened. Because overruling a 2-star general's professional recommendation requires more than just knowing he's wrong, Master Guns. It requires building an airtight case that his superiors can't ignore. Which is why I need something from you. She looked at Maya. I need you to take your program to the next level. I'm authorizing expansion to 3 additional bases, Camp Pendleton, Camp Lejeune, and Marine Corps Base Hawaii. You'll train instructor cadres at each location, standardize the curriculum, and document results with metrics that can't be disputed. Maya felt her heart rate spike. Ma'am, that's a massive expansion. We'd need additional instructors, funding, administrative support. You'll get all of that. I'm assigning you a team of 12 Marines handpicked from your current student roster. Morrison will serve as your senior enlisted advisor. You'll have 6 months to demonstrate that this program works at scale, not just in one facility with one exceptional instructor. Chen's voice dropped, became quieter but somehow more intense. But understand this, Lieutenant. If you fail, if there are any incidents that validate Brock's concerns, if there's even a whiff of impropriety or incompetence, I won't be able to protect you. Brock and officers like him will use that failure to justify shutting down not just your program, but every initiative involving women in combat instruction. The stakes aren't just your career. They're the careers of every woman who comes after you. The weight of that responsibility settled onto Maya's shoulders like a physical burden. I understand, ma'am. We won't fail. See that you don't. Chen picked up her tablet and headed for the door, then paused. One more thing. Your father and I served together in Iraq.
He was my company commander during the initial invasion. I watched him lead Marines with courage and integrity that set a standard I've spent 20 years trying to live up to. She looked directly at Maya. He'd be proud of what you're building here. Not because you're his daughter, because you're embodying the principles he died defending. Don't let political bullshit make you forget that. Then she was gone, leaving Maya, Morrison, and Reyes sitting in stunned silence. Morrison spoke first. Did that just happen? Did we just get expanded instead of shut down? Reyes was shaking his head slowly, a smile spreading across his weathered face. 47 unsolicited statements. Torres contradicting his own general. Chen personally intervening. Ma'am, you've got people willing to sacrifice their careers to defend this program. That's not just professional respect. That's belief in something that matters. Maya felt tears threatening and forced them back. She'd spent so long fighting alone, carrying the weight by herself, that the idea of people actually supporting her felt almost foreign. We need to move fast, she said, her voice steady despite the emotions churning inside. 6 months isn't much time to expand to 3 additional bases and prove the program works at scale. We need to identify our instructor candidates, develop the training pipeline, establish metrics for success. Morrison stood. Ma'am, permission to speak freely? Always, Master Guns. Take 1 goddamn minute to celebrate this. We won. Not completely, not permanently, but we won this round. General Chen could have buried us with 1 signature. Instead, she's giving us the resources to build something that could change the entire Marine Corps. His voice softened slightly. You've been carrying this alone for too long. Let the people who believe in what you're doing help carry the weight. That's what teams are for. Maya looked at him. This massive, intimidating Marine who'd started as her harshest critic and become her most loyal supporter, and felt something shift inside her chest. You're right, she said quietly. Thank you, Master Guns, for everything. Morrison's expression was serious. Thank you for not giving up on me when I didn't deserve your patience. You taught me more than martial arts techniques, ma'am. You taught me what real leadership looks like. Reyes cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional intensity. I hate to interrupt this moment, but we've got work to do. Chen wants instructor cadres identified within 2 weeks. That means we need to start evaluating candidates immediately. Over the next 10 days, Maya and Morrison conducted intensive evaluations of every Marine who'd trained in the program. They were looking for specific qualities. Technical skill was important, but more critical was the ability to teach, to adapt curriculum to different learning styles, to maintain discipline while building rapport with students. 27 Marines volunteered for instructor positions. After brutal evaluation that tested not just their fighting ability, but their teaching capacity and emotional intelligence, they selected 12. The cadre included Staff Sergeant Tyrell Jackson, Corporal Marcus Webb, Sergeant First Class Lisa Chen, a female Marine who'd been quietly training in the program and demonstrated exceptional technical skill and leadership potential, and 9 others who represented the best combination of competence and character. On the 15th day, Maya gathered her new instructor team in the main training facility. You're about to become the first generation of instructors in a program that a lot of people want to see fail, she told them. You'll face skepticism, hostility, and people who'll assume you're not qualified. Some of that will come from legitimate professional concern. Most of it will come from bias and fear of change. She paused, making eye contact with each Marine individually. Your job isn't to convince skeptics or win popularity contests. Your job is to teach techniques that keep Marines alive when everything else has failed.
If you do that with competence and integrity, the results will speak louder than any criticism. Jackson raised his hand. Ma'am, what happens if we screw this up? If one of us makes a mistake that validates what General Brock wrote in his report? Maya appreciated the honesty. Then we'll deal with it honestly and transparently. We'll identify what went wrong, correct it, and move forward. But understand this: mistakes are inevitable. Perfection isn't the standard. Consistent professional excellence, despite imperfection, is the standard.
Lisa Chen spoke up, her voice quiet but firm.
Ma'am, I need to ask something directly. Am I on this cadre because I'm actually good enough, or because you needed a female instructor for political reasons?
The question hung in the air like a live grenade. Maya walked directly to Chen and looked her in the eyes.
Sergeant Chen, you're on this cadre because you're technically proficient. You teach with clarity and patience, and you demonstrate the kind of discipline under pressure that defines exceptional Marines. Your gender is irrelevant to your qualifications. If you weren't good enough, you wouldn't be here, regardless of what political optics might suggest.
Chen nodded slowly, and Maya could see relief in her expression.
Thank you, ma'am. I needed to hear that.
Anyone else have questions they need answered before we start? Maya looked around the group.
Now's the time for honesty, because once we deploy to these bases, we're representing something bigger than ourselves.
Corporal Webb raised his hand. Ma'am, what do we do if we face the same kind of disrespect you faced when you first arrived? How do we handle Marines who question our credentials because of who trained us? Morrison stepped forward before Maya could answer. You handle it the same way Lieutenant Nakamura handled it, with discipline, professionalism, and overwhelming competence. You don't get baited into emotional responses. You don't waste energy trying to convince people who've already decided not to believe you. You let your performance do the talking. He looked at Maya, and something passed between them. Mutual respect earned through shared struggle. 3 months ago, I was the Marine questioning her credentials, Morrison continued. I was convinced she didn't belong here, that she was a political appointment coasting on her father's reputation. I was completely wrong, and I had to get my ass thoroughly kicked before I could see past my own prejudice. He paused, his voice getting rougher. Don't be like I was. Don't let pride and assumption make you blind to people who can teach you valuable things. But also don't let anyone convince you that you're less qualified than you actually are. You earned your place on this cadre. Now go earn the respect of every Marine you teach. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Jackson started clapping. One by one, the other Marines joined in, not the polite applause of military formality, but genuine appreciation from Morrison's honesty. Maya felt something warm bloom in her chest. This moment right here was what made all the struggle worth it. Not medals or commendations or career advancement. The privilege of building something meaningful alongside people who believed in the mission. All right, she said, her voice cutting through the applause. We deploy to Camp Pendleton in 72 hours. Between now and then, we're going to rehearse every single class, drill, and demonstration until we can execute them in our sleep. Questions? There were no questions, just Marines ready to work. 3 days later, Maya stood on the tarmac at Camp Pendleton, watching her instructor cadre unload gear from the transport aircraft. The California sun was brutal, the kind of heat that made you question every life decision that had led you to this moment. Waiting for them was a crowd of approximately 100 Marines, some curious, some skeptical, most clearly reserving judgment until they saw what this program actually delivered. And standing at the front of that crowd, arms crossed, expression unreadable, was a Marine colonel whom Maya recognized from service photos. Colonel James Mitchell, Sarah Mitchell's older brother.
Morrison saw him at the same moment Maya did. His entire body went rigid. "That's Sarah's brother," Morrison said quietly, his voice tight.
"I haven't spoken to him since the funeral. He blamed me for not protecting her, for not stopping her from taking that assignment."
Maya's mind was racing. This wasn't coincidence. Colonel Mitchell commanded the training battalion at Pendleton. He'd known they were coming. He'd chosen to be here when they arrived. The question was whether he was here to support them or destroy them. Colonel Mitchell walked forward slowly, deliberately, his eyes locked on Morrison. The crowd of Marines behind him went silent, sensing drama about to unfold. When Mitchell stopped 3 feet in front of Morrison, the tension was thick enough to cut. Then Colonel Mitchell did something that shocked everyone watching. He extended his hand. "Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison, it's been too long." Morrison stared at the offered hand like it might be a trap. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Then listen," Mitchell said, his voice rough with emotion. "I blamed you for Sarah's death. I blamed the SEALs, blamed the entire Special Operations community. I was angry and grief-stricken, and I needed someone to be responsible for the fact that my baby sister was dead." His hand was still extended, waiting. But anger doesn't change facts. Sarah died because a team leader made a bad call, not because you failed to protect her. And spending 3 years hating you hasn't brought her back or honored her memory. Mitchell's voice cracked slightly. "I'm sorry, Master Guns, for the things I said at the funeral, for blaming you, for all of it. You deserved better from me." Morrison's eyes were wet. He took Mitchell's hand and shook it firmly. "Sir, I'm sorry I couldn't save her. She didn't need saving. She needed someone to listen to her intelligence assessment. That failure wasn't yours." Mitchell looked at Maya. "You must be Lieutenant Nakamura. I've read your service record. Impressive doesn't begin to cover it." "Thank you, sir. I'm honored to be here." Mitchell's expression became more serious. "I'm not going to lie to you, Lieutenant. You've got skeptics on this base. Marines who think integrated training is political correctness disguised as tactical innovation. But you've also got supporters, including me, who think this program represents exactly the kind of adaptive thinking the Corps needs." He turned to address the crowd of Marines watching. "This instructor cadre is here to teach you techniques that might save your life in combat. Whether you learn from them is your choice. But if anyone disrespects these instructors or questions their qualifications based on anything except their actual performance, you'll answer to me personally. Is that understood?" A rumble of acknowledgement from the Marines. Mitchell looked back at Maya and Morrison. "Welcome to Pendleton. Make us better Marines. That's all any of us can ask." As he walked away, Maya felt Morrison's hand briefly touch her shoulder, a gesture of shared relief and renewed purpose. They'd survived another test, earned another ally, taken another step forward. But Maya knew the real work was just beginning. 6 months turned into a blur of 18-hour days, cross-country flights, and training sessions that pushed every instructor to their absolute limits. Maya's cadre deployed sequentially to Camp Pendleton, Camp Lejeune, and Marine Corps Base Hawaii, establishing programs at each location with the same methodical precision she'd used at Quantico. Staff Sergeant Jackson took lead at Pendleton, working directly under Colonel Mitchell's supportive oversight. Sergeant Lisa Chen headed to Lejeune, where she faced immediate resistance from senior enlisted Marines who couldn't reconcile a female instructor with their assumptions about combat capability. Represental Webb deployed to Hawaii with 3 other instructors, building a program from absolute scratch in a facility that had never prioritized hand-to-hand combat training. Morrison traveled between all 3 locations, troubleshooting problems, reinforcing standards, ensuring curriculum consistency.
He'd become more than just Maya's assistant instructor. He'd evolved into the program's operational backbone, the person who turned strategic vision into tactical execution. And Maya herself moved like a ghost between bases, teaching, evaluating, documenting results with obsessive attention to metrics that couldn't be disputed. Every class was recorded. Every student evaluation was logged. Every improvement in performance was tracked against baseline standards. Because she knew General Brock was waiting for any excuse to prove he'd been right all along. 3 months into the expansion, Lisa Chen called Maya at 0200 hours, her voice tight with controlled panic.
"Ma'am, we've got a situation at Lejeune. I need you here immediately."
Maya was on a flight 4 hours later, landing at dawn to find Chen waiting at the airfield with an expression that told her this was bad.
What happened? One of my students, Lance Corporal Kevin Bradley, got into an altercation at a bar off base. Civilian police were called. Bradley claims he was defending himself using techniques from our program. The civilian he fought is in the hospital with a broken jaw and possible spinal injuries.
Maya felt ice water dump into her stomach.
"Tell me everything."
Chen's voice was steady, but Maya could hear the fear underneath.
Bradley says 3 civilians started harassing him about being a Marine. Things escalated. One of them threw the first punch. Bradley responded with a throat strike and a takedown that put the aggressor through a table. Witnesses are mixed. Some say Bradley was defending himself. Others say he used excessive force.
Where's Bradley now? Confined to base pending investigation. The civilian's family is threatening lawsuit. Base legal is involved and... Chen's voice dropped. General Brock's office called this morning, requesting all documentation related to our training curriculum and Bradley's participation in the program. Of course he did. Brock had been circling like a shark for months, waiting for blood in the water. Now he had it. Take me to Bradley. Lance Corporal Kevin Bradley was 22 years old, built like a linebacker, with a fresh black eye and knuckles wrapped in bandages. He stood at attention when Maya entered the holding room, his expression a mixture of defiance and fear.
"At ease, Lance Corporal. Sit down and tell me exactly what happened. Don't leave anything out, don't exaggerate, just facts."
Bradley sat, his hands clenching and unclenching on the table.
"Ma'am, I went to a bar with 2 buddies from my unit.
We were drinking, not causing trouble, just trying to relax after a hard week of training. These 3 civilians started making comments, calling us jarheads, baby killers, saying we were wasting taxpayer money.
Did you respond?"
No, ma'am, we ignored them. But they kept escalating, getting louder, more aggressive. One of them, the guy who's now in the hospital, got in my face, started pushing me, saying I wasn't shit without my rifle.
Maya kept her voice neutral. "And then?"
He threw a punch at my face. I blocked it and countered with a palm heel strike to his throat, one of the techniques Sergeant Chen taught us for close quarters defense. He stumbled back, came at me again, and I executed a hip throw that put him on the ground. He went through a table on the way down. Bradley's voice was shaking now.
"Ma'am, I swear I was just defending myself. I didn't use excessive force. I used exactly what we were trained to do, neutralize the threat efficiently and stop the engagement."
Did he stop after the throw?
"Yes, ma'am. He stayed down. I backed off immediately, tried to de-escalate. But his friends started screaming. Other civilians got involved. Someone called the police."
Maya studied Bradley's face, looking for signs of deception or aggressive intent. She found neither. Just a young Marine who'd been put in an impossible situation and responded with his training. But that wasn't going to matter to General Brock or the civilian legal system. "Lance Corporal, I need you to understand something. What you did might have been legally justified self-defense,
But it's also going to be used as evidence that our training program teaches Marines to use excessive force in civilian contexts. Do you understand that? Bradley's face went pale. Man, I didn't mean to. I know you didn't. But intent doesn't change consequences. Maya leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. Base Legal is going to interview you extensively.
Civilian attorneys might get involved. General Brock is going to use this incident to argue that our program is dangerous and poorly supervised. She paused, making sure Bradley was listening. Your job is to tell the truth consistently and completely. Don't embellish, don't minimize, just facts. You defended yourself using techniques you were trained to execute. The civilian threw the first punch. You responded proportionally to neutralize the threat. That's your statement, and you don't deviate from it, regardless of who's asking questions. What happens to the program, ma'am? That's not your concern right now. Your concern is cooperating fully with the investigation and maintaining your integrity throughout the process. After leaving Bradley, Maya found Morrison waiting outside with Chen. Both of them looked like they'd aged 10 years in the past 12 hours. How bad is this? Morrison asked quietly.
Bad enough that Brock will absolutely use it to argue for program termination. We need to get ahead of this immediately. Full transparency with General Chen, documented timeline of events, witness statements, everything. Chen spoke up, her voice tight. Ma'am, this is my fault. I should have emphasized civilian application restrictions more clearly in training. Should have done better scenario-based instruction on proportional response. Stop! Maya cut her off. Bradley was attacked and defended himself using appropriate force given the circumstances. That's not a training failure. That's a Marine doing exactly what we taught him to do. Protect himself when threatened. But the civilian's injuries are the result of that civilian choosing to assault a trained fighter. Consequences matter, Sergeant Chen, but so does responsibility. Bradley didn't start that fight. He finished it. Morrison nodded grimly. The optics are still terrible, ma'am.
Brock's going to spin this as Navy SEAL instructor teaches Marines to brutalize civilians. Doesn't matter if it's factually accurate. Maya pulled out her phone. Then we control the narrative before he can. I'm calling General Chen right now. Brigadier General Andrea Chen answered on the second ring, her voice sharp. Lieutenant Nakamura, I assume you're calling about the incident at Lejeune? Yes, ma'am. I'm on the ground now, have interviewed the Marine involved, and I'm prepared to provide a full briefing. Good. Because General Brock called me 30 minutes ago, demanding immediate program suspension pending investigation of inadequate safety protocols and civilian endangerment. I told him to go fuck himself in slightly more diplomatic language, but he's not backing down. Maya felt a surge of gratitude for Chen's support, tempered by awareness that even Chen had limits to her authority. Ma'am, what do you need from me? I need you to prove that this incident was an aberration, not a pattern. I need documentation showing that your program emphasizes proportional response and legal constraints on force. And I need you to be prepared for Brock to make this as public and ugly as possible. Understood, ma'am. We'll have everything documented and submitted within 24 hours. Make it 12 hours. Brock's already talking to reporters. The line went dead. Morrison looked at Maya with an expression that said everything. This is it. This is where we either prove the program's value or watch it die. Over the next 10 hours, Maya's entire cadre mobilized like a military operation. Jackson flew in from Pendleton with curriculum documentation and student performance metrics. Webb coordinated with Hawaii instructors to compile incident reports showing 0 civilian altercations from their program participants. Chen pulled together witness statements, medical reports, and legal analysis of Bradley's actions. Morrison worked the phone, calling every Marine who'd trained in the program and asking one simple question. Has this training made you more or less likely to use force inappropriately in civilian contexts? 147 responses came back. Every single one said the training had made them more disciplined, more controlled, more aware of proportional response requirements. At hour 11, Maya sat in front of her laptop composing the report that would either save the program or confirm its termination. Her hands were shaking from exhaustion and too much coffee, but her mind was clear. She wrote the truth. Bradley had been attacked. He'd defended himself using appropriate force. The civilian's injuries, while unfortunate, were the direct result of that civilian's decision to assault a trained combatant. The program taught discipline and restraint, not aggression and brutality. She hit send at 0600 hours, exactly 12 hours after General Chen's deadline. Then she waited. 3 days of silence. 3 days of continuing to teach classes while knowing that every single session might be the last. 3 days of watching her instructors maintain professionalism despite the fear that everything they'd built was about to collapse. On the 4th day, General Chen called. "Lieutenant Nakamura, pack your gear. You and Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison are coming to Washington. The Commandant wants to meet you personally." Maya's heart stopped. "The Commandant of the Marine Corps?" "That would be the one. You're presenting your program to the Commandant, the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, and approximately 20 senior officers, including General Brock. This is either going to be your program's funeral or its resurrection. Flight leaves in 3 hours." The Pentagon was exactly as intimidating as Maya had imagined. Massive, bureaucratic, filled with officers carrying briefcases and career ambitions in equal measure. Morrison walked beside her through endless corridors, both of them in dress uniforms, both of them carrying the weight of knowing that the next 2 hours would determine everything. "You ready for this, ma'am?" Morrison asked quietly. "No, but we're doing it anyway." They entered a conference room that could have held 50 people. Seated around a massive oak table were Marine Corps generals whose combined service time exceeded 2 centuries. At the head of the table sat General Robert Harrison, Commandant of the Marine Corps, a 4-star general who'd served in every major conflict since Desert Storm. And directly across from Maya's assigned seat, General Harold Brock, looking like he'd already won. The Commandant spoke first, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded Marines in actual combat. "Lieutenant Nakamura, Master Gunnery Sergeant Morrison, welcome. We're here to discuss the future of your integrated combat training program. General Brock has raised serious concerns about safety protocols and civilian endangerment. You'll have 30 minutes to present your case. The floor is yours." Maya stood, feeling every eye in the room locked on her. This was it. Everything she'd fought for, everything her instructors had sacrificed, everything that mattered about proving competence over assumptions, all of it came down to the next 30 minutes. "Gentlemen, I'm not going to waste your time with PowerPoint slides or statistical analysis you can read in the written report. Instead, I'm going to tell you about Lance Corporal Kevin Bradley." She paused, making eye contact with each senior officer. "Bradley is 22 years old. He joined the Marines to serve his country with honor. He trained in our program because he wanted to be more effective at his job. And when 3 civilians attacked him in a bar, he defended himself, using exactly the discipline and restraint we taught him." Brock interrupted immediately. "Lieutenant, that discipline and restraint put a man in the hospital with life-altering injuries. That's not restraint. That's excessive force taught by instructors who prioritize aggression over judgment." Maya turned to face him directly. "Sir, with respect, Bradley was assaulted by a civilian who threw the first punch. He responded with a single throat strike and a controlled throw.
The injuries resulted from the civilian hitting a table during the fall. An unfortunate consequence, but not the result of excessive force. A trained combatant has a responsibility to use the minimum force necessary. Bradley used exactly the minimum force necessary to neutralize an active threat. Maya cut him off, her voice firm. He didn't continue striking after the civilian was down.
He didn't escalate beyond what the situation required. He did exactly what we trained him to do: protect himself efficiently and stop the engagement immediately. The Commandant raised his hand for silence. Lieutenant, let me ask you a direct question. Does your program adequately address the legal and ethical constraints on force application in civilian contexts? Yes, sir. Every course includes specific instruction on proportional response, legal limitations on self-defense, and de-escalation techniques. We emphasize that these skills are for life-threatening situations, not bar fights or ego conflicts. Yet a bar fight is exactly what happened. Maya took a breath. Sir, we can teach discipline and judgment, but we can't control whether civilians choose to assault trained Marines. What we can control is ensuring that when Marines are forced to defend themselves, they do so with the minimum necessary force. Bradley did that. The alternative would have been a prolonged fight with higher injury risk to everyone involved. General Chen, who'd been silent until now, spoke up. Commandant, if I may add context, since Lieutenant Nakamura's program began 7 months ago, we've trained over 400 Marines across 4 installations. The Bradley incident is the only civilian altercation reported. That's a 99.75% success rate for teaching restraint and appropriate force application. Brock's face reddened. One incident is one too many when it involves life-altering civilian injuries. General Brock, the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps interrupted, his gravelly voice cutting through the argument. With respect, sir, I've read the witness statements from the Bradley incident. Multiple witnesses confirmed the civilian threw the first punch, was verbally aggressive, and created the confrontation. Are you suggesting that Marines should allow themselves to be assaulted rather than defend themselves appropriately? I'm suggesting that Marines trained in lethal techniques have a higher responsibility. We do have a higher responsibility, Morrison said suddenly, his voice respectful but firm. The responsibility to defend ourselves and return home safely to our families. Bradley didn't start that fight, but he finished it using exactly the discipline Lieutenant Nakamura taught him. Anything less would have put him at greater risk. The room went silent. A master gunnery sergeant had just contradicted a 2-star general in front of the commandant. Morrison's career could end in the next 30 seconds. The commandant studied Morrison for a long moment. Master Guns, you were initially opposed to this program, correct? You challenged Lieutenant Nakamura on her first day at Quantico. Yes, sir. I was wrong. Completely wrong. And I've spent the last 7 months learning from one of the most competent instructors I've ever encountered, regardless of service branch or gender. What changed your mind? Morrison's voice was steady. She proved that competence transcends assumptions, sir. That discipline matters more than size or strength. That the principles my fiancé died believing in. That intelligence and skill should determine capability, not demographics. Actually work when you give them a chance. He paused. General Brock wants to shut down this program because one Marine defended himself in a bar. I want to expand it because 400 Marines are more lethal, more disciplined, and more survivable because of what they learned. That's what actually matters. The commandant leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. General Brock, you've made your concerns clear. Do you have evidence beyond the Bradley incident that suggests systemic problems with this program? Brock opened his mouth, then closed it. The potential for civilian endangerment, that's not what I asked. Do you have evidence of systemic problems, multiple incidents,
pattern of inappropriate force, anything beyond one Marine defending himself in a bar fight. Brock's jaw tightened. No, sir, but the risk. Every training program involves risk, General. The question is whether the benefits outweigh those risks. The Commandant turned to Maya. Lieutenant, final question. If I approve program expansion, what assurances can you give me that we won't see more incidents like Bradley's? Maya met his stare without flinching. Sir, I can't guarantee that Marines won't be forced to defend themselves in civilian contexts. What I can guarantee is that when they do, they'll use the discipline and restraint this program teaches. The alternative is Marines with less training, less control, and a higher likelihood of excessive force or personal injury. The Commandant nodded slowly. Then he turned to General Chen. General, your recommendation? Continue the program, expand to 2 additional installations, maintain current oversight protocols. Lieutenant Nakamura has built something valuable, and shutting it down based on one incident would be throwing away proven results because of political fear. General Brock, your response? Brock's face was a mask of barely controlled anger. Sir, I maintain my position that this program represents unacceptable risk. But if the Commandant chooses to continue it against my professional recommendation, I'll comply with orders. The Commandant stood. Everyone in the room immediately came to attention. Here's my decision. The program continues. Lieutenant Nakamura will expand to Marine Corps Base Quantico as permanent home, with satellite programs at current locations. General Chen will maintain direct oversight. And General Brock, his voice hardened slightly, you will provide full cooperation and support. If you have concerns about specific protocols, submit them through proper channels. But the time for questioning this program's fundamental validity is over. Am I clear? Crystal clear, sir, Brock said, his voice tight. Lieutenant Nakamura, congratulations. You've just been promoted to Lieutenant Commander and assigned as Permanent Director of the Marine Corps Integrated Combat Training Program. Don't screw it up. Maya felt her knees go weak. Thank you, sir. We won't disappoint you. See that you don't. Dismissed. Outside the conference room, Morrison leaned against the wall, breathing hard like he'd just finished a sprint. Did that actually just happen? Did we just win? Maya was shaking, adrenaline and relief flooding through her system in equal measure. We won this round. There'll be more fights ahead. Let them come, Morrison said fiercely. We've got proof now. We've got the Commandant's support. We've got results that can't be denied. General Chen appeared from a side corridor, a rare smile on her weathered face. Nice work, Commander. Your father would be proud. The use of her new rank hit Maya like a physical blow. Commander. Not because of her father's Medal of Honor, because she'd earned it, through competence, discipline, and refusal to quit when everyone expected her to fail. Thank you, ma'am, for everything. We couldn't have done this without your support. You did the hard part. I just made sure the right people were paying attention. Chen's expression turned serious. But understand this, Brock isn't going to stop. He'll be watching for any mistake, any incident, any excuse to prove he was right. You've got to be perfect from here forward. We will be. Chen nodded. I believe you. Now go build something that lasts. 18 months later, Maya stood in the main training facility at Quantico, watching her instructors run a class for 70 Marines, men and women training together with mutual respect, learning techniques that might save their lives when everything else failed. The program had expanded to 8 installations. 1,200 Marines had completed the training. 0 additional civilian incidents. Performance metrics showed measurable improvement in close-quarters combat capability across every unit that participated. Morrison walked over, his expression content in a way that would have been impossible 2 years ago. "Ma'am, we just got word. The Navy's requesting permission to adopt our curriculum for SEAL training. They want you to consult on integration." Maya smiled. Full circle. Started as a SEAL, ended up teaching Marines, now teaching SEALs what I learned from teaching Marines. Sarah would have loved that irony, Morrison said quietly.
She always said the best innovations come from breaking down barriers between communities.
She was right. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Marines learn, grow, transform. A young female lance corporal approached hesitantly. "Commander Nakamura, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you keep going when everyone doubted you? When they said you only got opportunities because of your father or your gender? How did you not let that break you?" Maya looked at this young Marine, probably 20 years old, just starting her journey, already facing the same skepticism Maya had battled her entire career. "I kept going because quitting would have validated everything they believed. Because my father didn't die so I could give up when things got hard. Because Sensei Yamamoto taught me that discipline means continuing when continuation feels impossible." She paused, making sure the lance corporal was listening.
But most importantly, I kept going because I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for every woman who'd come after me, every Marine who'd benefit from this training, every person who needed proof that competence matters more than assumptions. The lance corporal nodded slowly.
"Thank you, ma'am. That helps." After she left, Morrison spoke quietly. "You know what the most important thing you built here is? Not the training program, not the curriculum, not even the results." "What then?" "Hope. You gave people hope that the system can change, that merit actually matters, that doing the right thing consistently will eventually overcome bias and politics." Morrison's voice was rough with emotion. "You gave me hope when I'd given up on everything except anger and grief. You showed me that Sarah's death could mean something if I channeled that pain into building something she would have believed in." Maya felt tears threatening and forced them back. "You did that yourself, Master Guns. I just showed you what was already there." "Maybe, but you're the reason I found it." That evening, alone in her office, Maya looked at 3 photographs on her desk. Her father, in dress blues, taken 1 month before he died in Kandahar. Sensei Yamamoto demonstrating a kata, his ancient hands still precise and powerful. Morrison teaching a class of Marines, men and women learning together, his face showing none of the anger and grief that had consumed him 2 years ago. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Lance Corporal Bradley here, ma'am. Just wanted to say thank you. Civilian charges were dropped. I'm back with my unit, and I'm using what you taught to train my platoon. You saved my career, and probably my life. Semper Fi." Maya typed back, "Keep training, keep learning, keep proving that discipline matters. Semper Fi, Lance Corporal." She touched the faded scar on her knuckles from Helmand Province, remembered every fight she'd won and lost, every person who'd doubted her, every moment she'd wanted to quit but hadn't. Her father had died believing that service to something larger than yourself was the highest possible calling. Sensei Yamamoto had taught that true mastery meant transforming opponents through demonstrated discipline, not defeating them through violence. Morrison had shown her that broken people could rebuild themselves if given the right tools and genuine support. She'd synthesized all of those lessons into something that mattered, a program that trained warriors while building character, a legacy that would outlive her personal service. That was enough. That would always be enough. Maya Nakamura smiled, closed her laptop,
and headed to the training floor. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new skeptics, new battles to fight.
But tonight, she'd celebrate what they'd built through discipline, sacrifice, and absolute refusal to accept that limitations defined by others should determine personal possibility. Control and discipline, service before self, competence over assumptions. Those weren't just principles. They were the foundation of everything that actually mattered in a life dedicated to something larger than personal comfort or recognition. And that foundation would stand long after every critic had moved on to easier targets.